In this video, you'll see real aviation incidents caught on camera, and each clip is presented as an educational breakdown of what went wrong. We'll look at the key moments leading up to a plane crash, including takeoff mistakes, unstable approaches, and mechanical issues, then explain the decisions and factors that turned a normal flight into an emergency. This is not sensational content, and it's not about blame, it's about understanding how small problems can escalate in seconds. Viewer discretion is advised. On August 6, 2025, a Beechcraft Super King Air B200 operated by Woodgate Aviation departed Birmingham Airport in England for Belfast International Airport in Northern Ireland. Shortly after takeoff, the crew declared an emergency and returned to Birmingham. Tracking data and reports indicate the aircraft made a low pass over the runway before landing on runway 33 at about 12:58 UTC. Authorities reported one person suffered minor injuries, and the runway was closed for several hours while emergency services responded. The incident was linked to a reported landing gear problem, with the main undercarriage collapsing on touchdown, and the UK Air Accidents Investigation Branch opened an investigation. On January 21, 2024, a Cirrus SR-20 operated by Daedalus Aviation faced very challenging conditions on approach to Birmingham Airport in England during Storm Isha. Around 1:34 p.m. local time, the runway in use was runway 15, and other traffic had just abandoned landing attempts because wind shear was being reported on final. In the video, you can hear air traffic control warn about the conditions. Then, after the light aircraft gets down safely, the controller tells the pilot, "That was very impressive." This is an educational breakdown of what went wrong in the environment and why it mattered. The key factor was rapidly changing wind close to the ground, a classic setup for low-level wind shear, where airspeed, sink rate, and drift can change in seconds. The weather observation from Birmingham around that time showed wind from roughly 200 degrees at 16 knots, gusting to 26 knots, with the direction varying widely, exactly the kind of instability that makes the last few seconds before touchdown unpredictable. In those conditions, a go-around is often the safest option, and that's why multiple aircraft were forced to discontinue their approaches. This clip is a good reminder that on a gusty day, the problem isn't just crosswind. It's the sudden changes that can push an approach out of tolerance faster than the pilot can correct.
Okay, 30 Papa Tanky, descent to altitude 4,000 feet, then descent with the glide path.
It's 224, you get master inside.
Okay, copy.
On May 24, 2002, a single-engine Cessna 150 towing an advertising banner made an emergency landing in a parking lot outside Edison Field in Anaheim, California. The pilot reported engine trouble and released the banner, which drifted onto a chain-link fence beside a nearby freeway. The airplane then bounced across the lot and hit a brick wall, but the pilot and one passenger were able to walk away with only minor injuries. It happened just hours before that evening's Anaheim Angels game against the Minnesota Twins. On July 29, 1994, a Belanca 17-30 Viking departed Oakland Pontiac Airport in Pontiac, Michigan, on an IFR flight plan to Oshkosh, Wisconsin. About 1 minute after takeoff, during the initial climb from runway 27 right, the pilot reported the engine began running rough and then lost power. With limited options below, the pilot attempted to troubleshoot while descending, including trying to switch fuel tanks, but the aircraft continued losing performance and ditched into Pontiac Lake near Waterford, about a half-mile west of the runway departure end. The airplane was substantially damaged, and the private pilot and 2 passengers sustained serious injuries. Investigators later found the fuel selector positioned between the left and right tanks, with only a small amount of fuel in the lines leading to the engine. A post-accident engine test run showed normal operation, and the National Transportation Safety Board listed the exact reason for the power loss as undetermined, while noting the improper fuel selector position as a key finding in the sequence.
No, but is the stuff explosive that's in here, in this fuel?
There was just 3 of you in the plane, right?
Yeah.
On February 26, 2024, a Bell 206 helicopter operating a tourist flight crashed on a rooftop helipad in the Manrique area of Medellín, Colombia. The aircraft had just lifted off from the rooftop of the hangar M45 complex when it failed to climb away and began to yaw and spin over the building. Witness videos show the helicopter completing multiple rapid rotations before the tail and rotor area struck a nearby communications antenna. The impact stopped the spin, but the helicopter ended up suspended and partially hanging between the rooftop structure and the antenna mast. 6 people were on board, and emergency crews carried out a rooftop rescue. All occupants were brought out alive, with at least 1 person reported injured and taken for medical care. Local authorities cited strong, shifting winds in the area at the time, while Colombia's civil aviation investigators opened a formal investigation to determine the exact sequence of events and the primary cause. On April 11, 1989, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a privately operated Sikorsky helicopter was performing a construction lift near the Bayview area using a sling to move a large air conditioning unit from the roof of a condominium building. During the lift, the helicopter's tail rotor drive system failed, taking away the aircraft's anti-torque control. With no effective tail rotor thrust, the helicopter yawed uncontrollably and entered a rapid spin, leaving the pilot with almost no time or altitude to recover. The aircraft came down hard and was heavily damaged, but there were no fatalities. Contemporary reporting identified the pilot as the only person on board and said he survived with injuries. This incident is a clear example of how a single mechanical failure in the tail rotor system can instantly turn a routine external load job into a loss of control emergency.
I'm recording.
On October 23, 2022, a first-person action camera video was shared online showing a Russian Sukhoi Su-25 pilot ejecting from his aircraft during operations connected to the war in Ukraine. The footage itself does not publicly confirm the exact date and location of the incident, but multiple aviation outlets reported it as coming from that conflict. In the video, the aircraft is flying low when an emergency develops and the pilot initiates ejection. The camera captures the seat firing, the parachute opening, and the pilot descending into a field. After landing, the pilot checks his arms and legs, then speaks by radio. Another aircraft passes overhead, and the pilot replies that he is okay. A column of smoke is visible near a tree line, consistent with the aircraft impacting away from the landing point. The key takeaway for an educational breakdown is how little time exists at low altitude. When a strike or onboard failure turns into fire or loss of control, ejection can become the only survivable option in seconds.
Да, наблюдаю.
On July 29, 2022, a Mi-8 helicopter operated by Georgia's border police under the Ministry of Internal Affairs crashed in a mountain gorge near the Gudauri resort during a rescue mission for two tandem paragliders who had fallen into difficult terrain. The helicopter was hovering over the ravine during the recovery attempt when it suddenly lost control and slammed into the gorge, and the final seconds were captured on video by eyewitnesses. Interior Minister Vakhtang Gomilauri later confirmed that all 8 people on board were killed, including the flight crew, along with rescue and medical personnel. Gomilauri also said that one of the 2 paragliders died, while the other survived with injuries and was taken for treatment. In response, Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili declared July 30th a national day of mourning, as investigators opened an inquiry to determine exactly what caused the loss of control during the hover. On September 19, 2014, a privately owned Gazelle helicopter went down in the Gulf of Finland off St. Petersburg, near Vasilievsky Island. Investigators said the pilot was flying extremely low over mirror-smooth water, misjudged his height, and the helicopter settled into the surface before breaking apart and sinking. The pilot was killed, and the lone passenger was seriously injured. No fire was reported. On August 10, 2022, an Airbus AS-350 helicopter went down in mountainous terrain near Boquete, in Panama's Chiriquí province, during a flight planned from Changuinola in Bocas del Toro to David in Chiriquí. Video from the cockpit shows the aircraft flying toward a ridgeline as visibility drops sharply into cloud and mist, and the helicopter then crashes in low visibility. Presidential hopeful Dimitri Flores was among the 6 people on board. In a message recorded after the impact, Flores said they were alive, but stranded in the mountains at around 4,500 feet, near Jaramillo, and he reported broken arms and legs among the group, while asking for rescuers to be sent. Panama's aviation authorities confirmed the accident and reported injuries, and rescue operations were carried out with support from the National Aeronaval Service. All 6 occupants survived and were evacuated from the crash site, while investigators opened an inquiry. Preliminary information described the accident as occurring in a mountain range area with low visibility.
Después de Ceiba, llegando a Jaramillo. Después de Ceiba, llegando a Jaramillo, bro. El helicóptero se estrelló. Trata de mandar para que me vengan a buscar, por favor. Aquí hay piernas quebradas, brazos. Wow, somos 6.
On November 1, 2016, an Airbus helicopter's AS-350B3E on a sightseeing flight crashed in the Adler district of Sochi, Russia, coming down in the courtyard of a private home on Semlyanskaya Street. The helicopter struck trees and a parked car, clipped power lines, then hit a parking canopy and broke apart. 2 passengers were killed, and the pilot and 3 other passengers suffered serious injuries. Investigators concluded the loss of control began during a descending right turn at high speed and steep bank, which triggered a control effect known as servo transparency and left the pilot unable to recover before impact. On July 27, 2023, a Mi-8 helicopter operated by Altai Avia was bringing an excursion flight with tourists into the area near the village of Tyungur in Russia's Altai Republic. Eyewitness video shows the helicopter descending to land, then drifting and yawing during a hover maneuver close to obstacles. The official investigation concluded that the tail boom and tail rotor struck a reinforced concrete power line support, and the helicopter then hit the ground and was destroyed by post-impact fire. There were 16 people on board, including 3 crew and 13 passengers. 6 passengers were killed, and the remaining occupants survived with injuries. Investigators listed several contributing factors, including choosing a landing spot without safe clearance from obstacles, the effect of gusty tailwind during hover, an unnecessary hover turn before touchdown, and uncontrolled lateral movement just before contact with the power line.
Авария, вертолет, Андамхан.
On January 13, 2018, a Pegasus Airlines Boeing 737-800 arrived at Trabzon Airport on Turkey's Black Sea coast, flying a domestic route from Ankara. Conditions were poor, with light rain, mist, and reduced visibility, and runway 11 was in use. After touchdown, the aircraft suddenly veered to the left the paved surface, and slid down a steep embankment toward the water, coming to rest at an alarming angle on the cliff slope. Passengers recorded the immediate panic inside the cabin, followed by an emergency evacuation through the exits, as the jet sat precariously close to the sea. All 162 passengers and 6 crew members got out safely, and the airline said there were no injuries. For an educational breakdown, the key point is how fast directional control can disappear on a wet runway. In rain and mist, braking effectiveness can drop, tire grip can change abruptly, and even small asymmetries, like uneven braking or a sudden yaw, can push an aircraft off the centerline before the crew has time to stabilize it. Trabzon's runway environment also left little margin. Once the aircraft departed the runway edge, the slope pulled it downhill and made recovery impossible. Investigators opened an inquiry, but the precise initiating cause of the excursion was not confirmed publicly at the time. What is verified is the sequence: touchdown on runway 11, a left deviation, a runway exit, and a full evacuation with everyone surviving. On May 12, 2019, Myanmar National Airlines Flight UB-103, an Embraer 190, flew from Yangon to Mandalay International Airport in Myanmar, with 82 passengers and 7 crew on board. During the approach to runway 17, the crew selected landing gear down, but a warning indicated the landing gear did not agree with the lever position, and the nose landing gear failed to extend. The captain took control. The crew ran the abnormal landing gear extension procedure twice, and air traffic control was asked to observe the gear status. With the nose gear still retracted, the aircraft remained in the pattern while emergency services were positioned. Then the crew carried out an emergency landing on runway 17 using the main gear only. After touchdown, the aircraft's nose settled onto the runway, and the jet slid to a stop about 4,800 feet from the runway threshold, with smoke reported from the cockpit area. Passengers then evacuated using the emergency slides, and no injuries were reported among the 89 people on board. The investigation classified the occurrence as a serious incident and found the nose gear was misaligned and jammed in the wheel well. The stated probable cause was improper maintenance, including maintenance actions that did not follow the fault isolation manual for an intermittent weight off-wheel system fault, along with poor workmanship during nose landing gear strut servicing. On June 8, 2019, an experimental, amateur-built Lockwood Aviation AirCam crashed during a takeoff attempt at Hemet Ryan Airport in Hemet, California. The pilot, who was a commercial pilot flying the aircraft as a personal Part 91 flight, began the takeoff roll in visual weather with no flight plan filed. Shortly after liftoff, the airplane rolled sharply, went inverted, and struck the runway surface, sustaining substantial damage. The pilot was fatally injured. Investigators documented that the accident occurred at about 9:38 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, and the National Transportation Safety Board opened an investigation to determine the exact cause of the loss of control. On July 9, 2025, a Robinson R-44 Raven II was approaching to land at a private residence near Inlet, New York. While still over the lake, the pilot flared and lowered the collective to prevent a climb. The helicopter began to settle, and when he raised the collective, his grip interfered with the governor, so the throttle did not increase and rotor speed decayed. The helicopter struck the water and was substantially damaged. The pilot and 2 passengers were not injured. Investigators determined the probable cause was the pilot's failure to maintain control during the landing.